This episode of Bass Freaks is brought to you by Dunlop Bass Strings. Dunlop Bass Strings are made in California and designed by the players at Dunlop to sound and feel the way a string should, with deep lows, strong fundamental punchy mids, and articulate highs. Dunlop Bass Strings offer a complete line with standard, nickel, and stainless round wounds, flat wounds, and super brights. They're also available in short, medium, and long scales, so go to jimdunlop.com and check out Dunlop Bass Strings. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Dunlop Presents Bass Freaks. This is a place for all of us bass freaks to chat it up, gain a little insight and inspiration, and have some fun with some great bass players. I'm your host, Josh Paul. And today we welcome the very awesome Amos Heller to the show. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers. Dude, how are you, bro?
Oh, dude, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I am psyched to be here.
Hey,
thanks.
Knuckles. You can't see this, but we're bumping knuckles here at the moment.
Zoom Nux.
Let's talk about some of your history, man. For people that don't know Amos, he's the bassist in Taylor Swift's band. And how long you been doing that?
It's true. I've been there about 13 years now.
Wow. All right.
Found a way to hang on, man.
Okay, so let's go backward. Tell me about how you started playing bass.
Sure. I actually went to a middle school that had a killer orchestra. And when I transferred into the school system, this is back in Virginia. So I'm from Charlottesville. And they just had a public school system with an excellent fine arts program. They had a great band, theater, orchestra, all that kind of stuff. So I knew when I rolled up in the orchestra that I was probably going to be last chair in whatever section I picked. And I kind of figured last chair out of 4 bassists looks better than last chair out of, 27 violins. So it was a bit of a variation on the, how everybody starts playing bass, because everybody else in the band played guitar already. It was like maybe the classical version of that.
Got it.
I really quickly fell in love with the role it plays in music. I liked the size of it. I'm a pretty small guy, and I sort of liked the silhouette of this, all my parents' friends could think to say to me when I was little, like, well, that's bigger than you are.
I got the same thing.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. And to be honest, most basses are bigger than I am still nowadays.
Yeah. They're supposed to be. That's what I kept saying. I get all huffy about it. It's like, they're supposed to be. It's supposed to be tall. Not a cello, you Philistine.
The struggle is real.
The struggle is so real. Compact bassists. That's another, it's a whole subgenre.
We're starting a club. Go ahead.
But I really liked it, man. I liked the power of it. Like once I figured out the bowing and how to get the instrument to, make the sound, I loved it. I loved, because, when you play classical music, you just have the stuff that's in front of you. Mm-hmm. And to just be focused on the notes that you're playing and the dynamics that you're, providing to the ensemble. And then to hear all this stuff going on around you that's all built on the foundation of what you're doing. That was awesome for me. And to be somewhere where everybody was good, with really passionate teachers, and we would go do competitions. So it had this real, it was like a combination of an orchestra and a sports team, just a little bit. We go to festivals and compete and try to get good scores. And we had trophies and stuff like that. So it was kind of nice. It was
That's
half
amazing.
Orchestra, half football.
That's awesome. And they still have that program?
Oh yeah. No, they're still going strong. At least my high school orchestra teacher is still teaching at the high school I went to.
Oh, wow.
At Charlottesville High School in Charlottesville. Mrs. Thomas, who was definitely one of the reasons that I'm still a musician.
Shout out to Mrs. Thomas.
Yeah, big time.
Was there a bassist or someone that you saw as a young kid that you thought, wow, I really need to do that. That is what I want to do.
100%. And it was Cliff Burton.
Woo!
100.
You are not lying.
No. And I just watched Scott's Bass Lessons, just did a great feature on him, on his life and his background. And man, that guy, between his, how he sounded playing, and I loved Metallica. I rode in my brother's car to school every day, and that was all he played was Master of Puppets, Justice, and that's why I fell in love with heavy metal, was my older brother Jesse. So then it was, half orchestra and half thrash metal was sort of how I really got started. And my girlfriend in ninth grade gave me, do you ever see the Cliff 'Em All tape?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just shots of him, a bunch of takes of the anesthesia solo. And man, I've heard people talk before about performers kind of giving permission. And I think that's a great way to think about, for me, what Cliff did is like, you can do this. You can play lead bass, you can stick out, you can headbang like a madman the entire time, foot up on the monitor. I aped him so much, as much as I could when I was first starting out. And just that really solidified. He's more or less the personification of what I wanted to do and what bass was to me at that time. And my tastes have broadened a lot over the years, of course, as all of ours have. And I've fallen in love with, Paul McCartney and James Jamerson and stuff like that. But for me, coming up, it was Cliff, and then it was Flea, and then it was Billy Gould, and it was and then Rex Brown from Pantera, guys with really piercing tone and parts that really stood out. And I was like, that I love that. I love bass that sticks out and makes just a great big statement.
Aggressive. As far as Cliff goes, and I would say the same sort of about Bootsy as well. They made it okay for you to have your own identity as a bass player.
Yes. Yeah. And big time.
That inspired me so much as well.
A real fingerprint. And that is, it's a lofty goal to start out with, for me, as when so I got my first electric bass for my bar mitzvah when I was 13 years old. And immediately I was like, cool, I'm just gonna Cliff Burton and Flea my way through this thing.
What was it?
It was an Ibanez EXB 404.
Oh, what color?
I remember that. It was black.
Okay.
It was, Ibanez Road Series bass. I think it was made out of balsa wood. It weighed like 5.5 pounds. It was so light.
How high was the action off that fretboard?
Oh my God, so high. So unbelievably high. I also just understood so little about setups and all the other stuff that comes with being a bass player on top of, your facility and fretboard knowledge and approach. There's, using the right effects, knowing how to gain stage, understanding your pickups, your preamp, all that stuff. And I didn't understand any of that. And I remember, I don't know what happened or why I decided to do this, but that bass in particular, I ended up putting like a quarter and a nickel underneath each bridge saddle.
Oh, wow.
I lost a saddle screw from one. So I had one of the things was tilted to the side. I put like a nickel under that to get it level.
Out of necessity. I got you. Okay.
Out of necessity. And then I can't remember why I did. I don't know if I was getting some really bad buzz up and down the fretboard and didn't think to have it set up or have it straightened. So I just raised the action. And when I ran out of saddle screw, I'd put like a couple of pennies in there. And it was just, I probably couldn't even play it now. It was just hilariously high, but I was playing a lot of upright at the time. So I'm like, okay, this is fine.
Yeah. You were adapting.
I guess so.
Yeah, you were making it work. You were making it work.
I was not getting a lot of freelance setup work. I can tell you that.
That's awesome. So from there, what was your first real gig, pro gig?
Let's see. We probably have to flash forward to, I went to college at Miami University just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay.
And was kept going with bands. I was in a cover band. We did a lot of the heavier side of top 40s. We played like Hum. We played a couple of Rage covers. We did 311, Smashing Pumpkins, all that kind of stuff. And then first pro gig, gosh. I mean, I did a little regional touring when I was in Cincinnati. I played for an artist named Rich Hordinsky, who used to be in Over the Rhine. I played with an artist named Kim Taylor. There was a rock band that used to be on MCA called July for Kings that I did some stuff with. That's probably the closest to coming out of Cincinnati anyway, the stuff that I could have access to. It was all van and trailer stuff, nothing really pro. And in fact, I was starting to get a little frustrated. I just couldn't, even in Cincinnati, which actually has a pretty great music scene. And I was in an original band and I was doing some session and side work. Nobody that I knew was doing the tour bus thing, was doing anything truly pro. I couldn't see anybody from where I was who was doing the thing I really wanted to do. My aspirations to be a professional musician had stayed through a couple of detours, and in my mid to late 20s really came back to it hard. It's like, let's do this. Let's really figure this out. And on the, half joking advice of a friend of mine, I moved to Nashville. And so probably my first really pro gig in Nashville was playing for Rhett Akins.
Oh
Do you know
yeah.
him?
Okay.
So Thomas Rhett, who's doing big stuff now, it's actually his dad.
Got it.
Was
Okay.
a great he's a big writer. He's had a bunch of hits, but I think most of his artist success was like late 90s kind of stuff. So
What year was that?
that was 2006.
Okay.
I moved to Nashville in 05, started working at Fido, worked at a coffee shop because one must.
As we do.
As we do. I was coming off of working at Starbucks for 2 years in Cincinnati. So I'm just getting all the coffee shop, bass player compulsory credits out of the way. And then, just through kind of a friend of a friend, got a sort of informal audition to play for Rhett. And that was my first, I'm on a tour bus. I did it. I'm in a bunk. This thing has a bathroom. I've never been so happy in my life.
Wow. That's a great feeling.
You
Moment
really
that you
was.
step on the tour bus,
Yeah.
especially cruising around in vans or driving yourself to gigs in the little Honda.
Absolutely.
The moment you get to jump on that tour bus is an amazing feeling.
What was yours? What was your first bus?
Well, I was fortunate, man. I was in high school, or just graduated when I joined Suicidal Tendencies. So I didn't have to do the van thing.
Oh.
I jumped right on a tour bus as a teenager, and the tour bus was bigger than my apartment that I lived in at the time, and
it's amazing.
I was like a mansion to me. So it was a dream come true for sure.
That's amazing, man. That was very much what I had sort of hoped and prayed would happen to me. If I could have spun the wheel and come out of high school and go right into Suicidal Tendencies, that would have been awesome. As I'm sure it was for you, man.
It really was. Okay, so from Rhett, where did you go from there?
Rhett, I started playing for another country artist named Josh Grayson. Was with him for about a year, and then got the call to go play for Taylor. So I was in Nashville for 2 years, I think. I got some good advice from a friend right when I moved to town. So when I was just trying to meet people, just go out to bars and see bands and just be a person on the scene, which is tough and kind of strangely lonely work if you don't have a compatriot, because it's just like at a bar by yourself. And
right.
If you need a break from, if you had a rough day at work, that can be awesome. But I'm there to work and meet people and really trying to flex the extrovert muscles, and just having figured out, thanks to some good advice, that it's a lot of it is about connections and the hang and relationships. So I'm trying to, and I remember I would say to anybody who I can meet, it's like, it's like, what do you want to do? I said, I'll do anything. I feel comfortable doing sessions. I'll do side work. I'll do bus stuff. And a friend of mine finally said, he's like, it's hard for me to know how to help you if you just say you want to do everything. It's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I want to be on a tour bus. He goes, cool. Artist gig is what we call that. So you want an artist gig? I'm like, yes, I do. I don't want to take a turn driving the van anymore. I want to sleep comfortably on a bus and do the whole thing. So he helped me kind of hone in and figure out the right folks to meet and the right skills to get together, the right gear to try to, fashion together and learn how to use. So yeah, it was all just relationships. And I had a really formative moment very early in Nashville. I was doing a showcase for a buddy of mine. We're at a rehearsal, we're sort of meeting everybody for the first time. And the drummer was the band leader for another country artist. And he gets a phone call and he says, hang on guys, I have to take this, leaves the room for 5 minutes, comes back, sits down and takes a deep breath, says, do any of you guys know any fiddle players? Mine just quit. And I was like, that's how it happens. That's how it goes. This is it. It's not a resume. And in some sense it is the hang and going out and having a drink with somebody and meeting him at the bar. But man, it's this guy is a pro. He's the Nashville touring pro. I was almost scared. It's oh, there he is. I was in a rehearsal with him, super nice guy, really, really friendly. And I was sort of scared that everybody would be, a big crusty over it jerk, but everybody's really nice. Cause it's a music town, but it's still the South. We're nice. Most people are nice and chatty and generally helpful. And there was a real revelation. It's like, it's about having connections. Like, what if I played fiddle, or what if his bass player had just quit? It's like, I think it just works like that. And so that was how I made a lot of moves. I just knew folks who thought I'd be a good fit for a musical operation that was losing a bass player. That a lot of my moves came just that way.
Okay. So would you recommend for a young bass player or a musician that wants to do what we do, what steps would you recommend that they take? Let's give them some advice.
Man, that's a great question. One that I get a lot, and I'm gonna quote my friend Max Bernstein, who's he's a guitar player in Taylor's band. He's a brilliant MD. He works with like Weezer and The Offspring and Hayley Kiyoko and Miley Cyrus. He does really, really big stuff. And he and I were talking about that exact question. And his advice, which is the best that I've ever heard, is, so you're new to Nashville and you're trying to figure out, and you've figured out where somebody who has a gig like you want is playing. He's like, go watch them. Go support the thing that other people are doing. Go see the show. A lot of people will, as you know, as I think all of us know, like, and I can't fault people for doing this one bit, because it's what I did. You go, hey man, I'm a bass player. I'm new to town. Here's a couple of videos. I'm looking for work. If you hear of anything, let me know. And you go, okay, cool. And then that person probably passes out of your mind. No offense to them. But coming to a show, like finding people who are doing stuff that you like, if you like blues, or if you like jazz, or if you like metal, especially in Nashville and probably most big cities, there's places to go see and participate in that scene. So go find where the thing that you want to do is being done and see how you can help. I'm going to remember someone much more if they're talking about something that I created and care about that they happen to resonate with as well, other than just, again, you can't fault them, but going, hey, if you hearing about anything, let me know. I'd be like, okay, cool. I'm going to throw you on the pile of 18 people who have all asked me to let them know if I hear anything.
Yeah. Build a community, be part of a community.
Be part of it. And because that is what it's about. It's about relationships, and it's about, being the person that you would want to hire if you were in their shoes. Like, what do you want? You want somebody whose game is together and whose gear is together. But as you and I both know, it's like you play for 2 hours a day during the show, and the other 22 hours you're living with someone. So, you want to pick somebody you get along with and want to spend time with.
100%. Let's talk about going through all of those years. I'm assuming that prepared you for a big gig with a big pop artist. So when you jumped into that, do you feel that you were prepared, or did you have a lot of on-the-job training?
When I started like touring at any kind of level, and as you and I both know, like, even once you get to the bus, there's levels of the bus. Like, are you doing like club gigs, theater gigs, arena gigs, stadium gigs, international theater gigs? Like, there's all these other experiences. So it would be like, when we're gigging and touring, I feel like that's reflected more in like my backpack than my playing. Like, the stuff that I know that I need to sort of function, that one emergency at a time, you remember to bring like an extra pair of running shoes, extra pair of headphones, or backup charger for your computer, all that kind of stuff. But there's the kind of learning that you can only do by experience. Somebody could sit and tell you about how to behave and what to do, but every camp is different. And so it's about getting to know the folks that you're around, and it's still like the advice I'd give to the mythical young kid, like, how can I help? How can I contribute to this? What can I do to make this a little bit easier? Even if it's just showing up on time with a current passport, that can be huge.
In the land of rock and roll, you are correct.
There is all sorts of different stuff that comes with, like I said, like going to different kind of venues and being and the difference between, being an opening act and you're on someone that's probably the biggest one I noticed, was being an opening act. You're on someone else's stage, someone else's time. Sound check is from here to here, and you gotta, we don't have a ton of time to work on this, and then the other gear's got to work right and be quick to pack up small and get it on stage, get it off, all that kind of stuff. But when we moved to headlining, for me, that felt like a real sea change in the experience, where we have techs in a world, and my basses are in a vault now. It was, like my bassist finally got to get on the bus, pretty much. Think a vault is a bus for basses. I think. I don't know. We can workshop that.
Yeah. Google helps.
Google does help.
Well, let's for people that may not be aware. So the country touring schedule, the Nashville touring schedule is quite different than, the rock and roll touring schedule. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, that was something that I was really happy to find when I moved to town, is that it's so a lot of country acts, big and small, they're like outdoor festival season, sort of in the height of summer, is where everybody gets an awful lot of work done. There's all sorts of state fairs everywhere. There's, Country Thunder, Country Stampede, just a lot of, I guess disaster themed country festivals. So you do a lot of that during the summer, but also the runs don't tend to be very long. So it's a lot more common to leave Thursday night and come back, Sunday lunch or so, and then have most of the week to sit and be in town and either, be with your family or keep your contacts list nice and fresh. So you can go out and you can do stuff in town. You can do sessions and side work and all that kind of stuff. So that is really nice. And feels like it's something that's evolved over the years to give musicians who play for country artists a lot of flexibility. So you can go do your gig on the weekend, you come back and play some gigs on Broadway, do some stuff in town, stuff like that.
Would you say that that's a typical day for a Nashville touring musician? Typical week?
Oh, man, I don't know. I don't know anymore.
Okay. It has changed even since I've been here. I've been in Nashville for 5 years. But for people that aren't aware, have never been in Nashville, I've never played in Nashville, it is different.
Man, doing just to rewind a little bit. So again, for folks who might not know, it's like all over what we call Lower Broadway in Nashville, like right downtown, there's all these clubs with live music going on pretty much all the time. And when I moved here, again, this is forever ago, that was a step you hit on the way to being a country session player. And it was really instructive because those folks know hundreds of songs. And it's for folks who are visiting from out of town who, somebody might walk through the door who's just a huge Buck Owens fan. And if they put, $20 in the jar and they want to hear Act Naturally, you better know it. So I just tried to amass a huge repertoire of as many country music songs as I possibly could. And I got a lot of death stares on the way to that.
I'm sure.
A guy who called a song and I said I didn't know it. He turned around and looked at me. He goes, "Where were you raised?"
Wow. Like
it's my parents' fault now. Like it was generational. My not knowing of this song. So I was like, well, I'm going to go write a chart for that tonight. So this doesn't happen again. I don't even bring my parents into this.
Oh my goodness. That's funny, but not funny all at the same time.
It's funny now. Years later on this podcast, it's funny. Sweating through my shirt, standing downtown 2 hours into a 4-hour set where I'd known like 4 songs because I just tried to keep a smile on my face.
See, I think that is an important trait, especially being a touring musician and working for different artists. You get into a bus, you don't necessarily know the people all the time. There's crew people, and just smile as much as possible.
Yeah.
Just go with it as much as you can.
Yeah. And just speaking of crew real quick, just to make sure you're, the fact that we're on stage under the bright lights can turn your head around if you're not careful, but it's helpful to remember that those lights wouldn't be there, and neither would the stage, without the professionals that you're putting your life in. You're putting your life in their hands every time you go out there. So I learned to stay out of the crew's way too. That's a pretty big skill.
Absolutely. And much respect to them.
Yeah, big time.
Making it work. Let's see. So tell us about your best gig and your very worst gig. You don't have to name names if you don't want.
Oh, okay. Gosh, best gig like ever?
As a professional.
Okay, as a professional.
Professional.
Let's see. Man, the thing that leaps to mind, and this I'm actually not even sure who this is with, but I have big respect for the folks who play at some of these Country Thunder festivals, the folks that play at 2 p.m. right into the blazing sun. And that can be so challenging because at that level, maybe you're not commanding a lot of the crowd, and maybe you're playing in front of people who just are saving their seats because Luke Bryan is coming on in 6 hours and they want to make sure that they're in the right spot. So you are sweating your brains out playing to what can be a sea of people like looking at their phones or not really engaged with you. So that feels like a lot of energy laid out for not a lot coming back, and then just getting drenched by playing 2 p.m. in a Oklahoma summer. That can be pretty tough.
That sounds like a country song in itself.
If the gig gets hard enough, it turns all the way around. You can just describe what's happening over a train beat and you've got a country song.
Right.
Man, I remember also when I first started out, there was an artist. I'm not going to name him. He didn't do anything wrong. He was actually great to work for, but just the gigs that he booked were so tough. And we would pull up and we would load in, set up, and ring out our own PA, run our whole sound check, grab a quick bite, 3 hour-and-a-half sets of covers and some originals, pack everything back up and, load it into the van, couple of beers, and then we're on the way to the next thing. That was some of the first touring I did when I got to town. Also playing a casino at 2 p.m. That's tough.
That's something I've yet to do.
Yeah, that's tough. That's also a pretty disconnected crowd.
Yeah,
most of the time. So I mean that can be fine. So you sort of turn inward, and like I'm just gonna focus on me. I'm really gonna try to lock in with the drummer and just see if there's some place I can go in my brain to have fun here. But those are really tough. Best gig. Yeah,
give me a highlight. Like
sure.
Like your oh my God, I've made it moment.
We played a show with Taylor at the Staples Center in LA, and Mary J. Blige sat in with us.
And
I got to play Family Affair with Mary J. Blige. That was
awesome.
That was one of the most, and we had worked on it for a long time. I certainly had worked on it for a long time. So I'm listening to like live tapes of her band. I don't know who plays bass for her, but they are magnificent. And it was this great, it's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse. It's sort of more like 90s R&B. And then, then the arrangement that they'd done, same as like I was saying before, like I couldn't tell you when Family Affair came out, but it's a classic at this point. So, 10 years of arranging and rearranging, and it was pretty intense by the time I got a hold of a board tape for it. And it was I felt it was probably the most present I've been I had been in quite a while. That felt like a real triumph. Once we crashed out and the lights went down, I was like, whoa. Yeah.
You had to be proud though.
We were not the whole band. Everybody just did yeoman's work putting that song together, and that was really, really fun. Trying to think what else. Man, this may be slightly obnoxious to say, but I'm happy to say that I've had a lot of really great gigs, and there's a lot of just
nothing wrong with that.
A show that just went smoothly, where I felt like I was on, and I was able to stay really focused on stage and got a lot of energy back from the crowd. Whereas it can, it's easy to get lost in, it's a bunch of airports or hotels or strange cities or times away from your family. Like every now and then it comes up and just rings your bell. It's like, this is the thing that you wanted to do your whole life more than anything. And you get to do it. Look. I was telling a friend, like, I try to drag 14-year-old me with me everywhere I go. I try to drag sophomore year of high school Amos on stage and go, look what you get to do. Look at this, look at the gear you get to play through. Look at these beautiful basses. Look at the tour bus you get to go on. Like I try to keep that sense with me as much as I can.
Keeps it all in perspective and
it's important.
Gratitude.
Yeah. Cause you can turn anything into a slog if you think about it in a particular way. And you can turn most things into something at least partially triumphant if you think about them the right way.
That's true. State of mind. That's awesome.
It matters. It matters big time.
Yeah. Let's go back to gear, man. What basses are you using?
So I'm big into Fenders and Yamahas. Those are probably my two favorites, the ones that I use the most. I've got, a couple of like sort of straightforward P basses that I absolutely love. I have a it's like a 50s reissue Mexican P bass. That's here you go.
Yeah, let's hear it. Can you plug it in?
Something for all your listeners, but I'll show you.
Okay.
Got that marvelous, yeah.
Is that a salmon color or what is that?
Yeah, Fiesta Red.
Fiesta Red.
What it says on the label, but salmon. It's also been called, melon.
Melon.
And,
ooh.
Just I really it has
fat.
a quarter pounds in it. Has I guess one of the last people to get an actual Leo Kwan badass bridge on it.
Is that one of your mains?
This is a main one. This okay. Comes with me pretty much everywhere. If I go to a session, if you hired me for a gig that didn't tell me anything about it, I'd probably bring this. It just does a lot of things really well and
workhorse.
Isn't terribly expensive or bespoke, even though I've upgraded the pickups and bridge, and it's just does what a P bass is supposed to do. It does a lot of things really, really well. Responds to a really heavy hand or really light touch really well. I keep rounds on it most of the time.
Okay. What strings do you use?
I love the D'Addario NYXLs. I came across a box of those a little bit ago, and they work. They're nice and crispy, and then they mellow into a really solid brightness that stays for a little while. Because of, I think, my love for players like Rex Brown and Billy Gould and Flea, I like most of my basses have rounds on them, and I like that crispy, attacky sort of sound. So yeah, I mean, it's a maple neck P bass, so it's definitely gonna give you that. And then the NYXLs keep that nice top end for a long time, I've found.
Awesome. And earlier, before we actually started doing the show, you were talking about your violin bass. Can you plug that bad boy in?
Absolutely.
Or girl, I'm not sure if you've named it.
Yeah, man, this one's pretty special. It doesn't have a name, though. It says Orlando right on the thing, so I guess we can just call it Orlando if we want. I don't know. Do you name your basses? I used to name when I pardon the obnoxiousness, but when I didn't have so many, I used to name my basses, and that fell off, unfortunately.
Yeah, I have kids, so I don't want to take away. I got to give them the attention.
I've already named a couple of things, and I'm just out of good names. Some things that happened for a while. Yeah, so here's the Orlando.
Oh. Very Beatlesque. You can do some soul stuff on there too as well.
Yeah, man, it's great. It records really well. It's like a little bit quirky. It's like one of those ones that you have to know your way around a little bit. It doesn't sustain like crazy, but it's all passive and has these humbuckers that have just monstrous output. And I like it's like maybe a 70 or a 71, and they're rare. But if you find one, they aren't $6,000. They're usually under $1,000.
Oh wow!
So pretty accessible. And this is another one that comes with me to pretty much every session that I do. It just sits perfectly. This one I got it, 9 or 10 years ago, and have never changed the strings. I don't know what they are. They came on it, and I've never changed them. Wow.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Yeah.
Looks very cool too.
It's beautiful, like deep brown color. And it's just, it's toured with it. I don't tour with it anymore. Just because I don't want to subject it to all the, barometric and elevation changes and all that stuff. I just want it to stick around for a long time, and it's a hollow body. So I'm into it that it's fairly fragile. So I just want to make sure it sticks around for a long time.
That's awesome. What about amps?
Amps, I've actually been using Form Factor. Do you know about them at all? I'm not familiar with them. Yeah, I ran into them at NAMM a couple of years ago, and actually this is so I got to meet Jack, the guy who makes the Noble bass pre that I'm also a huge fan of, and he was walking around NAMM with one around his neck, like a Flavor Flav clock. He just had a Noble on a lanyard, basically. Okay. And we were looking for a place to go try it out, and we were standing right next to the Form Factor booth, and they had a thing going that I thought was pretty great. Their whole setup was they had a cable running into a power amp into one of their cabinets. So it was like with no preamp, nothing. What does this cabinet sound like? Just literally amplifying the sound of your bass. And I was pretty stunned. So I like them a lot. And I mean this as praise. I have a 210 of theirs that is just monstrously heavy. I think it's like, 65 or 70 pounds. But I don't know. I understand, of course, the draw of light cabinets, especially if you're hauling them up and down stairs all the time. But for me, I like the weight, and it's really high powered and really substantial. I'm a huge fan. It just sounds really good, really clear. I think they made PAs before, so it has that kind of thing. Like, okay. No, almost no color. Like you'll do the color yourself with your hands, your bass, your pickups, your pre, your drive, your effects, anything else. Like all we're gonna do is be a reference monitor. So I'm a big fan of form factor.
Very cool. How do you choose the right bass for a song?
Man, that's a good question.
What are your determining factors?
Well, genre, of course, is the first thing I'm gonna look at, and there's, anything from the artist that might be behind the music to the producer that you're working with. If you have stuff that and it's hard to go terribly wrong. It's sort of like, do you want a bright tone or a dark tone? Like, are we doing something with rounds or something with flats? If you're doing something with rounds, do we want something active or something passive? And just using, I guess, never really thought about it consciously, but just using kind of a branching decision tree like that usually helps me land on the right thing. I'm very fortunate to have quite a few basses, but not so many that if I can go, well, I want a warm sounding bass with flats and some definitions. Like, well, I only have one jazz that has flats on it, so we'll do that one, like that. And I only have one P bass that has flats. I have this Orlando. I have a couple of different like active 5 strings. That probably would be the one where I would have the most to decide whether I'm going to do this, this Yamaha, this Fender, or this other Fender. But the stuff that I rock most of the time isn't wildly different. I've been messing around with Stingrays a lot recently and kind of falling in love with them, especially the specials, the updated ones. I know you have messed with. So
I love them.
So that's a big new color to paint with for me. So that's another branch in the tree as far as that goes. But yeah, just trying to fall down through, and like who does, if there's a specific song, does this remind me of anyone specifically? If it's like, a driving rock song that reminds me of Jimmy Eat World, like P bass for sure. Probably the one with the quarter pounds in it that has a nice, picky definition. Yeah, am I playing with a pick? Am I playing with my fingers? God forbid, does this need a slap part? Does this, do I need to use a drive? Do I want it to be, warm and saturated, or bright and really, punchy and distinct? So yeah, just trying to think of what I hear in my head once I hear the music. How about you?
Exactly the same. Really, it all depends on what the situation is, but pretty much the same as you, I'd say.
Yeah, it's also sort of, when in doubt, I just pick up a P bass.
Yeah.
Probably going to work for whatever we're doing,
That makes sense. It is the workhorse.
It is, man. And I think it's funny. And I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, I know they sound good, full stop. A P bass is a good sounding bass. But I think there's one of the reasons that we think about it as sounding so good. It was the first one. So Leo invented an instrument that became immensely popular, and the only one that was available was the one that he came up with. So
how crazy is that?
I know, dude.
Think about that.
Yeah, just the stuff that dude invented. It's like, oh yeah, he worked on the Stingray also, and GNL.
Yes,
I mean, the world would be a different place without him for sure. But I think it's funny, like as that music came up, and of course, Motown exploded like right after that. So much of what we are used to hearing sonically from a bass player is probably a precision.
It is familiar. Yep.
When folks were crafting the very first rock mixes or funk mixes, R&B mixes, had a P bass in them, and that was just how you carved it out. So it doesn't hurt that it's just an outstanding instrument also.
Yep. 100%. All right. I know you have children. And you're married. How do you balance career, touring, and family life?
Well, that's a good question. And I had a buddy of mine who said, he's like, I don't use the word balance. I use the word negotiation.
Okay. Let's elaborate a little bit further.
Sure,
on that.
Absolutely. The short answer, of course, is my amazing wife, Kara, who just takes care.
Wait a second. Your wife's name is Kara?
My wife's name is Kara.
Mine too.
I had a feeling yours might be because I see my wife's name on your knuckles every time. What the heck, man?
Dang it. You found me out. Oh man, that's awesome.
You're a handsome man.
We have so many different things in common. You have twins. I am a twin. We both have Kara as our wife.
Yeah.
That's
hilarious. Spelled the same way as well.
Yes.
But no, I mean, obviously I couldn't do it without her, and anything that I go to do that moves my dream and my passion further down the road is something that lands in her lap. That's more responsibility for her to take on as far as taking care of the kids. And I sort of like turn in my touring schedule when I get it. And then I can just see her brain just like fire up with like, okay, so we'll do this and this, and I'll book him a camp here. My mom will take him here. I'll come see you here. I'll bring that, like she has a very intentional approach to our life, because as a touring player, as you're kind of, I want to level up to the, Nathan East or Pino Palladino level where you just tour, when you want to with someone that, strikes your fancy, you might do, but it's not the case right now. So I sort of exist at somebody else's ideas and plans. So I just sort of, because that can be unpredictable at times. So I count on her to sort of form a functional family life that I'm still a part of around the craziness and the absence that's a part of being a touring player. And it's been so long since we've done a show, and the twins are just about to be 5. So they still have no idea, I think, what I do. They think what I do is in here. They're like, I'm at work right now. Like I go in here and clickety clackety, and you can hear me talking about distortion pedals to the camera back here. But
oh, that's just Dad. He's working.
That's just Dad. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been seeing some badass demos that you've been doing online.
Oh, thanks.
How
man.
are those come? Those are awesome. You sound great. You look at you all pro and stuff with your camera work. That is awesome.
Man, I am just a loose association of YouTube tutorials, pretty much. I got into the whole thing. I work with Yamaha a lot, and they did a great thing when the pandemic hit, where they were just trying to get some of their folks working in some capacity. So they said, can you film a short lesson, and then it's like a short performance piece, something we can put out and share to show what folks are, doing now that touring is shut down. And that just kind of dragged me into it, and decided that, I had a camera. It's finally time to learn how to use it and get some of the home recording, just straightforward stuff really, really dialed in together. And I got a lot of support from the companies I reached out to, because I need some raw materials. I reached out to JHS and Dark Glass and Ernie Ball, and those folks have been so kind about sending me stuff just to play around with. But man, the creative aspect of doing that has been really fun for me.
It looks totally pro, I got to say. It doesn't look like you don't know what the hell you're doing at all. So good kudos to you on that one.
Thank you.
Tell me, what's the process on that? What on your first one, were you crapping your pants, or were you like, oh my God, what am I going to teach here? What are we doing here?
The subject matter of the lesson came to me pretty quickly. I really like palm muting on bass, either with a pick or just with your thumb. And I thought, man, that's a great thing. I can explain it quickly. It's great for beginners, or maybe even more advanced folks who haven't tried it. So, man, the first thing I did certainly was just turn on the camera and just get up there and go for it. Just, sort of off the cuff, off the top of my head, just like I'm teaching a lesson or talking to somebody. And then the editing process started, and I had a lot of stuff. I was like, I'm going to get rid of this. No, I said that too many times. And so now I actually use a script. But it all starts with the gear, whatever the, distortion pedal, amp, pickups, bass, whatever it is that I'm using. It's about spending time and getting to know that. And man, I've had a lot of pieces that the first time I pick them up and mess with them, I'm like, I don't know, that's going to be okay. I'm sure we'll figure out something to talk about. And by the end of the process, I'm just in love with it.
Okay. So give me an example. Is there something that really inspires you right now, gear-wise?
Well, I've been doing a lot of stuff with Dark Glass, and that's been really fun. And I think I was, to be perfectly honest, a little dubious about it at first, because when I think about Dark Glass stuff, like most folks do, I think like metal, that's super, drivey, grindy, top end kind of thing. And I was like, wow, I like metal and stuff, but that's not a lot of what I do now. I grew up playing it, but that wasn't my tone back then. I don't know how my playing is going to fit together with this. and then figuring out how well that stuff works at lower gain settings for just like some nice saturation or some more straight ahead kind of warm distortion. It does that stuff really well. And then when you put it at the extreme settings, you still get that clank and that grind and that amazing top end, but it does a lot of subtle things really well. So I've been pretty inspired by that.
Awesome.
I just got to mess around with the Nordstrand Asynonix.
Oh, awesome.
That is a really, that weird like short scale, it's not semi-hollow, but it's got a real sort of like retro sort of pawn shop vibe about it. But it's got brilliant pickups and this really unique switching system. So I'm really enjoying, if I can't be out playing music in front of people, it's been really fun to dive deeply into gear and really learn it, to really take the time to sit down with something and figure out what does this do well, because all distortion pedals, all compressors are all envelope filters aren't created equal. Every one of them has some unique thumbprint, and it can take some time to drill down and figure that out. But man, that's been really fun. I feel like I'm leveling up in how I understand gear and how to get it to work together. So man, that's been really fun.
That's awesome. And not only have you been learning, you've been staying busy during this last, crazy year that we've had. But good job on that. I love those videos. Make sure, everybody, that you check them out and go see Amos when he's on tour. Thank you so much. I'm grateful for you, man.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad you're doing this. This is it's a cool thing to have out there. It's nice for bass players, any bass player, to get to step up front a little bit and, just talk about ourselves. Find somebody who wants to talk about bass gear with me. And
right?
Don't go.
We're building our community up, man.
Big time.
That is our show for today. Thank you for joining us. Stay healthy and kind. Spread love, good vibes, and inspiration. And remember, you got this. Follow your path and just play. I'm Josh Paul. Hope to see you out there sometime soon. And thank you to Dunlop for making the show possible. Be sure to check out Bass Freaks wherever you get your podcasts. Cheers.